Well, hello, that's me again. Today is December 21, 2023. We're nearing, so to speak, the Christmas time, and I wish it was a good time to talk about love and, all those wonderful symbols we attach to the Christmas, family and things of this nature, of course. For people who are faithful, obviously, it's also the issue of, just birth of Christ and things of this nature. So, but, sadly, we do not live in the world which is all kumbaya. In fact, if anything else, it is 180 degrees opposite, or 360 degrees opposite, as Annalena Baerbock would have said. So, but let's start with this. And it's important introduction because I still have to figure out why they have the naming of all those operations like what is happening right now in the Bab el-Mandeb area and the Red Sea, which is called the Prosperity Guardian. I think so people in Pentagon who name those operations, they are the same people who work for IKEA, naming IKEA furniture, because that means it makes no sense whatsoever. But hey, we need to talk about this operation because it is important, and in many respects it is kind of justified. So, but let's start with introduction of this nature. And when I speak about the fact that U.S. military is not capable of fighting modern war, and for that matter, I mean any serious war, I will start with this. This is a military review, and it's military review, I believe, February of this year, and you can always go there. And fact is, you can actually upload or download, rather, the PDF file. But look what even American observers write about this thing. So for you to understand, and you will understand why I make introduction of this. Auftragstaktik originally referred more to the liberal use of skirmishes and firepower in infantry tactics over formal heavy infantry columns of lines than anything else. And look what people write. These are American officers, these are American thinkers who actually didn't lose their integrity. Nonetheless, modern interest in the Auftragstaktik and seemingly all things Wehrmacht armed forces began with British and American efforts at crafting doctrine and tactics to counter the threat emanating from the group of Soviet occupation forces in Germany. Later, the group of Soviet forces in Germany, German Democratic Republic, during the extended Anglo-American occupation of the Federal Republic of Germany during the Cold War, 1945-1991. Well, it's funny because the occupation still continues, but however, Echevarria is not alone in his critique, nor is he the first in calling out the U.S. Army infatuation with Germany's supposed military prowess. Historian Roger Beaumont critiqued the Army's uncritical infatuation with the Wehrmacht and asks the question, which I ask all the time: if they were so good, why did they lose? Were the odds just too great? If they were so smart after losing once, why did they try it again? And here is the issue. As already I am on record, the whole thing about United States Army is basically Wehrmacht, the way it was basically all kinds of iterations of the Blitzkrieg. That is all kinds of iterations of the land, sea, air battle, what have you. It is good old Wehrmacht. And when you consider the number of the Wehrmacht officers who essentially participated in shaping post-World War II U.S. Army, well, then you get basically understanding what is going on. And the fact is, it's not purely academic issue of just saying, oh yeah, infatuation. It is the fact when it begins to be internalized to such a degree that it becomes the guide. And then you suddenly have these guys actually who go out in 1991 in Gulf War, beat the crap out of the retarded and backward Iraq military and say, oh good, look at this, look how good we are. But truth is, they're not that good, as I already spoke on so many occasions. That basically just most of American generals who go out in the media, they are embarrassment to their country and to the U.S. Army. But here, why I started with this introduction about Wehrmacht, and you will understand now when you look attentively at today's Mr. Gerasimov, when he was speaking to military attaches, and Russians, as I already stated, they are very conservative, and there are all kinds of estimates of the opposite side, including their losses. But look at this, and he reveals the details, Mr. Valery Gerasimov, of Kiev's failed counteroffensive. And here is what he speaks about. And this is absolute Wehrmacht. This is absolute, those delusional, absolutely unscientific, and lacking even remote attachment to the military art ideas which have been promoted. But, well, not just Ukrainian general staff, it was basically, as we already know, planned by Pentagon and in London. People who didn't win a single war after the World War II, bar Grenada, of course. And here it is. The enemy plan was to blockade Melitopol by the end of the 15th day of the offensive, Gerasimov said. The Ukrainians then planned to advance towards the Sea of Azov, the city of Mariupol, and the border of Crimea, he added. Melitopol is a large city in Zaporozhye region, located some 40 kilometers away from the coast of the Azov Sea, and about 15 kilometers away from Molochny Liman, a large coastal estuary connected with it. Gerasimov noted that the core of the Ukrainian force used in the counteroffensive consisted of brigades trained and armed by Western nations. The grouping that was supposed to reach the Azov Sea initially included 50 battalions armed with over 230 tanks and more than 1,000 infantry fighting vehicles. Half of them Western-made, he reported. The force was later boosted to 80 battalions, according to General. Russian troops prepared deep offensive lines to prepare for the planned attack when Ukraine launched it on June 4. It achieved minor advances at the cost of colossal losses. This is your thing. This is your obsession and infatuation of the U.S. Army and British and generally Anglo-Saxons with Wehrmacht. They think that if you collect this, armor feast, you can punch through. And the problem is, as I already stated many times, but now I'm going to be making a very serious focus on that. And the focus is, if you read any good level operational staff document, you will encounter the use of the expression military art, operational art, and things of this nature. You may say, you are the one who constantly promote here that the military science is the hard science. It is, but that where it comes to the head, so to speak. Art is a complex issue of the creative application of those tools which are given to you by means of tactical tools, operational tools, technology, and things of this nature. And that's when it becomes art, and that's when it becomes the basically, the way or the vehicle, so to speak, for the emergence of the great generals. The generals of the level, of course, of Zhukov or Manstein or Rokossovsky, and you can sit here and, basically count them forever if you wish to. So that's art, because they basically use the operational and strategic imagination, and they approach it creatively. There is no rigidity in approaching this. Well, the tragedy of the U.S. Army is the fact that actually they believed that Wehrmacht was that good. Exactly, they still do. And they never ask themselves a question, who is the best power in the world of fighting defensive battles? Well, I can tell you that it's Russia. In fact, Russian actually even the engineering approach to war is unparalleled. But hey, they never learn. So, and that's as the result, Mr. basically Gerasimov tells you, well, it's kind of implied. I mean, those guys don't know what they're doing. They have been infatuated with this idea of the blitzkrieg successes of the initial phase of the Great Patriotic War in 1941-1942, until they have been stopped at Stalingrad Obviously, with the destruction of the Sixth Army, elements of the Fourth Army, of the full destruction of Italian, Hungarian, and Romanian armies. Well, not too bad, right? Well, guess what? They thought that Russians could do this only in winter. That's how much arrogance they had. Well, evidently, arrogance is what U.S. Army also incorporated from Wehrmacht. Well, guess what? Then Kursk happens, and then, of course, and it was, by the way, in summer, and after that, Russians never looked back and just ran there whatever Wehrmacht was throwing at that into Berlin in 1945. So, but of course, there is always an excuse. There is always, this way to say, oh no, we don't believe it because the communist propaganda didn't tell us the full truth, so we didn't study really the Soviet experience, Red Army experience in World War II. Well, guess what? There were people like David Glantz who did study it, and that's the man who opened essentially the whole Department of Slavic Military Studies, and basically in late 70s, early 80s. In the General Staff and Command College in the Leavenworth, Kansas. Well, now it is not very popular. I think so it will become very popular again, but I don't know. I don't think so they learned that many lessons there because they have this racist attitude towards Russians and they hate Russian gods because they also experience a huge complex of inferiority because United States Army never fought anything of this scale in its history. So, but here it is what it is. And that brings us to the Bab el Mandeb choke point, and it is called choke point. And what Houthis are doing now to their the international maritime traffic. And let me put it this way. I mean, I have to go with my dear friend Larry Johnson, and I have to agree with him. No, not on I agree on his title of the piece, which is called "The U.S. Navy is Unprepared for a Prolonged War with Yemen." But I have to agree with him that in many respects, reaction of the international people, let's put it this way, and international navies led by the U.S. Navy certainly is justified somewhat because obviously it is a critical choke point, it is a critical pathway for the international commerce, and it affects not only the United States, it affects everybody. As you know, the Yemenis, Houthis rather, they did everything in their power now to pretty much grind this whole maritime traffic to a halt, which of course immediately basically interrupts a lot of other supply chains in the world, not just for Israel, although it is understandable that the main, so to speak, focus of Houthi activity is against Israel and maritime traffic, which provides all necessary products, so to speak, and items to to Israel. But, as we already know, the Prosperity Guardian is already in force, and what we have here is important. So, let's take a look what people started to write about the basically whole situation. And the first people who started to write about this situation, so to speak, are Politica. And Politica notes, and again, I don't like Politica, it's a typical DNC, rag, but still, they point out a serious issue. And this was written 2 days ago, and they suddenly started counting. It's linear counting, there's linear extrapolation, but still, it's important. And they talk about the drones and missiles which Houthis use against the maritime traffic. And they say that a 2 million missile versus a 2,000 drone. Pentagon worried over cost of Houthi attacks. And they talk about that as American warships rack up kills against Houthi drones and missiles in the Red Sea, Pentagon officials are increasingly alarmed not just at the threat to U.S. naval forces and international shipping, which is a legitimate concern, but at the growing cost of keeping themselves. And U.S. Navy destroyers have shot down at this stage 38 drones and missiles in the Red Sea. And Politica continues about the costs. Well, costs matter because this is how we fight wars. And as one of the officials of the Department of Defense noted, the cost offset is not on our side. that quickly becomes a problem because the most benefit, even if we do shoot down their incoming missiles and drones, is in their favor, said Mick Mulroy, a former DoD official and CIA officer. We, the US, need to start looking at systems that can defeat this, that are more in line with the cost they are expending to attack us. DoD officials would not confirm what types of weapons are being used or range at which the drones are being intercepted. It is correct because obviously nobody wants to give up the tactical and technical parameters of their weapon systems, but as you can probably already guess, Houthis can overwhelm the basically the naval force, which basically runs this operation now. And the reason being is that if you look at the, for example, the main type of the ship, which is of course Arly B class destroyers, you can see yourself that being a Aegis ship, if you take a look at it, it is armed with, depending on the configuration, 96 all kinds of missiles, including Tomahawks or whatever Gasimovs they throw in. But of course, the majority, at least half of those missiles, are air defense missiles. So you can say that Arly B carries about 40 to 50, depending on their configuration, air defense missiles, which are SM-6s, which are active homing device. That means they active radar head, and that means they need only approximate position of the target, and of course SM2s, which are semi-active. And as you can see yourself, you see this round dish in the front of the on the superstructure of Arly B. You see this. Then if you look attentively towards the stern, you will see another two dishes of that. And here they are. These are these two dishes I'm talking about. So altogether it has three dishes, which are this radar, which is called fire guidance radar, which is IN SPG-62. These are the dishes which take the control of the SM-2 missiles and basically run them in semi-active mode. That means they provide this ray which illuminates the target and which guides essentially the missiles such as SM-2 towards the target. Allegedly, those radar can operate and can guide more than one missile simultaneously. How many, nobody will tell you, but people say that it's actually more than two. So who knows, maybe 2 or 3 missiles simultaneously. And so as you can see yourself, you have those 3 dishes, and theoretically, if you say that each the dish of the IN SPG-62 can guide, let's say 3, people say, let's say 5, but let's go to the lower range, so to speak. Let's say 3, it theoretically can guide, let's say 9, okay, 10 SM-2 missiles towards the targets. There's no doubt that Aegis Spy-1D radar will be able to detect pretty much slow-flying targets over the surface of the sea with no problems. And as you can see yourself, well, let's say 10 missiles against 10 targets which are being thrown against U.S. naval assets. You of course understand that. And then, of course, there are other types of the air defense missiles, such as Sea Sparrow, or advanced Sea Sparrow, which you can shoot in the shorter distance up to 7 to 8 nautical miles, I think. So you have additional kind of cover here. But even if you look at the Sea Sparrow, which is a short-range missile, it is extremely expensive. It is 1.8 million, if I'm not mistaken. So when you begin to put together the cost of this missiles, let's say even defending against their, let's say 20 targets, depending on the salvo, which Houthis may, just attack the force or international force from the shore. Who knows? I mean, you have the expenditure of the missiles, which everybody starts to point out. You cannot replenish them. in the sea. You cannot stick another missile into this vertical launch system, Mk-41, because it's impossible. They tried it before, it didn't work out that well. So what do you have? You have a classic attrition model. You have classic degrading of the air defense power for the US and other naval force. So count yourself how much in terms of millions of dollars you will expend defending against $2,000 drone, or if I think and take the word of the Israelis, who know about Houthis way more than United States. And let's go to Haaretz and see what Houthis also basically deploy, and we can take a look at this. So Houthi missiles. It was published on the 12th of December, so basically, well, around a week and a half. And here it is. This is Haaretz, and they say that Houthis are known to operate two types of larger anti-ship ballistic missiles. The Asaf, which appears to be an anti-ship version of the Iranian Fateh 313 with 450 kilometer range, and the Tankil, an anti-ship version of the, basically Islamic Guards of the Republic, developed Zuhair, which 500 kilometers. And they obviously equipped with all kinds of guidance, and the Iranians have been working on the development of more than a decade of the ballistic missiles in purely anti-shipping mode, the ones which can hit the moving targets. They say that there were setbacks. Obviously, there are always setbacks when you develop this technology. But 500 kilometers is fairly short range for this type of missiles, and it is not too bad for the seeker if you get my drift. If your seeker is optronic, I don't know if they have the radar active radar homing, but we don't know. We know that Iran supplied Houthis with quite a few of those missiles, and they say that the largest missile in the Houthis arsenal are the Asaf and the Tankil, which use optical and infrared sensors to enable the 300-kilogram warhead to lock on the target. According to Hinz, the Asaf is likely based on Fateh 303, which we already stated, and they basically have another missiles like Falak with a range of 140 kilometers and equipped with the anti-shipping homing technologies. So we don't know what kind of homing technologies, but believe me, sensor fusion is done by very many people with good engineers, and believe me, Iran has some best engineers in the field in this respect. So Haaretz continues that the Houthis have even converted the Six-Day War era SA-2 missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, the same what Ukrainians do. They convert S-200 missiles, which are very fast. They convert them from air to air, air defense missile into the anti-shipping or land attack missile. And they talk about SA-2, and they turned it into the surface-to-surface missiles, resulting in the Qaher-2M, as well as its anti-shipping version, the Muhit. Their ballistic parabolic trajectory is different from standard sea coastal missiles, correct, because they could be flying actually very low, which are guided to the target ship by radar and often fly at the height of the waves. Yeah, they are sea skimmers. To make detection difficult, they travel at much higher speeds, up to Mach 5, about 6,000 kilometers per hour. And this is where the issue lies. It is one thing to, for example, for Aegis to detect and, SM-2s and even Sea Sparrows start shooting at the basically those drones, and slow, good old, they have some of them, Chinese versions of the P-15 Termite Soviet missile. But when you look at this, what are you gonna do if you have the salvo of 3 or 4 almost Mach 5 anti-shipping missiles, which are sea skimmers? Well, that's a different game, and suddenly you have a completely different type of the mathematics. And believe me, Houthis know mathematics of the salvo exchange, of basically missile combat. Let me get you back to the great late Captain Wayne Hughes. You remember this book, right? Read attentively. This is the book, the second edition, which came out in 2001, more than 20 years ago. And yet, listen, look how the book is titled: Fleet Tactics and Coastal Combat, because the seat of the government is always on land, and you have to go into the littoral to start the real fight. You can launch whatever you want, your tomahawks, and define the targets whatever you want. But in the end, as in Bab el Mandeb, you need to get those ships through the Narrows, all those vessels through the Narrows. How you can do it? Just escorting them. And guess what? You become as good of a target as any commercial ship. And that's the issue for this operation. Again, who invents those stupid names? I have no idea. Evidently, people make careers out of it. So, and then when we go and look at this formula, this is classics. This is classics. Who just know how to do it? Because Iranians taught them, and there's some Arabs taught them. Some Arabs from, guess what, though, they graduated my Naval Academy while it was still basically preparing many Arab officers, including Syrians. Here it is. It is a probability of a missile hitting a target. And when you look at those parameters on those, you have approximate understanding what are probabilities for this or other event, and how it may influence the whole basically combination or structure of the salvo, especially if you have the ability to shoot at the naval targets or the sea, ships, basically, vessels or combat ships from the shore. You can configure your salvo in such a way that your WN, which is the probability of the success of the mission, and where you hit the targets and sink them or disable them, you will know what to do, because you can always kind of have some assumptions, and you can configure the salvo, and you can calculate how many missiles you need. It's a basic algebra there, and logarithmizing, and you will be able to know how you have to configure it. And this is what really matters for this whole situation. And that is why it's very difficult for US Navy, or for that matter, all kinds of navies which basically participate in this whole operation. I don't know what Seychelles do there, with what kind of power they bring there. I don't know, rubber boats, something like that. But obviously the US Navy, there is Spanish Navy, there are other nations which participate in there. They bring their serious air defense power. It matters. This power certainly matters. And Houthis obviously is not your state actor in a full sense, for example, as you would have encountered, God forbids, if Israel would convince the United States to go and commit suicide and start fighting Iran. Iran is a completely different game, because they have a very long range anti-shipping ballistic missiles, and they have like a huge number, gigantic number of the anti-shipping missiles of the classical combination, or basically classical flight trajectory, which is usually sea skimmers. Some of them subsonic, other of them supersonic. So it's not going to end up well for the US Navy. But Houthis are a little bit different thing. They are dependent, obviously, on the transfer of the military technology by Iranians. Who knows, Chinese, maybe. I don't think so. Russians provide them with anything anymore for a long time now. But we'll see. It unfolds in front of us, and we might see the interesting development in terms of the naval art, naval tactics, and even naval operations. So, and here where I want to make a very clear statement. People have to understand again. We might be not, in liking, for example, the regime in Washington and American geopolitical stance, which is, of course, a lot of crimes comes out of this geopolitical stance. But the operation of Prosperity Guardian, oh my God, is a legitimate thing. You cannot deny it, because obviously you have to maintain the shipping lanes of communications open. And believe me, I don't think so Russians are against that, or anybody else. Well, Russians might be not against it, but they will say, okay, let Houthis block this choke point. Hey, the Arctic route is out there waiting for you guys, So that's true. That could be the case. But in general, obviously, everybody understands that these effects of the supply chains all over the world, and of course there's nothing good when the basically international commerce is interrupted, even if to consider for the good purpose of stopping any kind of supplies towards Israel. Don't forget, most of what goes through the Red Sea and Suez are not for Israel. These are European and other countries, so it's a serious issue. And that's what I wanted to tell you today, guys. And in conclusion, as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buying me a coffee or two. And that's it for today, guys. And I'll talk to you later. Have a nice rest of the week. Bye-bye.